Go where your best prayers take you. Unclench the fists of your spirit and take it easy. Breathe deeply of the glad air and live one day at a time. Know that you're precious and learn to trust. Amen. Well, good morning to all of you. It is great to see you, and I'm glad you're in church, and we're in church together. I really mean that. What a great blessing and privilege to gather together. It's a busy day for us. A few folks are not in here this morning because there are other places. You know, we did a service at Lakeshore. We're doing a service right now out on the parking lot for Blessing the Pets. So that's lots of fun. This evening, the choir is going to do great music. So if you want a treat, come at 5 o'clock, right? 5. For the evensong, it is quite lovely. The music spectacular in honor of St. Francis Day, and that's what we're honoring. St. Francis and his image of how the world should look and could look. So proud of all the things going on, especially kind of that we're stretching ourselves. So we may have fewer people at one service, but we've got them at other services. So we've really been stretching ourselves a bit in these last months to kind of accomplish kind of the worship of all of us together. This morning, I want to tell you about Samantha Counters. Samantha's a young mother, extremely smart. She dabbles in TV production. She dabbles in radio. She does periodicals. She has a major blog about mothering. And she was out to lunch with her little boy, Tyler, who's 4. So they were having a lunch date. Not a big thing, but they were just having a marvelous time. And she tries to do that, individually go out with her children one-on-one to really spend quality time. They were having a great time. And she said she was thrilled watching Tyler eat, of all things, salmon avocado tuna rolls. She said, who knows? But anyway, he's on his number 5, and he was having a good time. And they were having a good time, and they were just playing and talking together. And she said they were sitting there, and a little distraction because all of a sudden they looked up, and another mother and her little boy came in, about the same age, about 4 years old, same age as Tyler. But this little boy was not as happy as Tyler. You know that thing? You can already see it. He was already fussy when he got in his seat, didn't like the seat he was in. Didn't like the napkin, threw the napkin off, don't like that. Then he got a hold of the tableware, and this is my favorite thing that my children used to do, is get the knives and forks and start banging them on the table. And pretty soon he then tried the ultimate. We've all done it. We've all seen it. He knew that he didn't have to yell or scream. He just kept raising his voice. And so every sentence got louder and louder and louder. And the mother was just sitting there looking embarrassed. And of course, the place was disrupted, and she felt terrible. And all of a sudden, Samantha said, out of the corner of her eye, she saw somebody get up, and it was a woman came streaking across the restaurant, stomped up to the table, looked down at her and said, ma'am, you are encouraging this behavior, and you're interrupting everybody's lunch, and you should get up and leave the restaurant. And she turned and walked away. And then this parting shot as she looked over her shoulder. My children never acted that way in public. And Samantha sat there watching going, holy smokes. Well, she thought about it, has had me thinking about it since I read the story a couple of weeks ago. And Samantha decided, I'm going to blog about this and tell this story and see what people think. And also aware that there is this conversation, I bet you're aware of it, about behavior in public and restaurants that don't welcome children or have hours that children aren't welcome, that kind of stuff. And not to be unwelcome, there's nothing wrong with that, but kind of setting boundaries about all this. So she wrote the story, and she got an onslaught of replies, as you can imagine, from moms. Incredible onslaught. And they kind of came in 2 camps. One camp was kind of this. Here's some of the comments from some of the moms. Kids' voices need to be heard. Parents need to be with their kids as they work on their feelings and not constantly trying to change or shape them. Parents need to help their children understand their emotions instead of trying to alter them all the time. That's kind of that side. And then there was another side. It's not exactly opposite. There were kind of this. You have to set clear limits with children. Don't give children negative attention. Set logical consequences for misbehavior. Children need to be taught that they are not the only ones in any social situation. So what do you think? The camps diametrically opposed? Maybe it's just because I've gotten a little older and away from primary child care. I do some of it still. But actually, I bet if we all slowed down, we'd realize every one of those seems valid, doesn't it? Actually, it's all of them. Not any of those is wrong. It's not one or the other, although I know there are people who write, you may be there, okay, I can talk about that one is more important than the other, okay, but are they exclusive? I don't know. I think they all have merit. And they have merit for a deep reason, don't they? And I think that's what Samantha was getting at. What's going on in this child rearing that we're doing today, where we think about it all the time and have opinions about it? We do. But there is something deep about this, isn't it? See, these children, all children, our children, your children, they all need to learn how to kind of regulate themselves. We all know that. That's part of the journey. It really is part of the human journey. We must learn at an early age that we are in charge of ourselves. So how do I manage myself? It is a primary skill set of being human if you want a civil existence. Now, if you want to be a hermit, you can go do that. But if you live with other people, you have to figure out, rather than have people make me do things, how do I get me to do things? It is a primary part of the journey. And it really starts extremely early. So I'm talking all of us that have parental experience, and the room is full of it. We've got a ton of it in here. I'm watching it right now with my grandbaby, Andy, who's 20 months old. I watched it the other day play a little game with Lois, my wife, and grandmom, and she was going, Andy, Lolo, Andy, Lolo, as she begins to shape words. Most of it, truthfully, sounds like Ewok right now, but there are some words coming out. And you see what she's doing, though? She's getting this distinction, I'm me and you're you. We are not the same. That is just going to continue. Because it's going to continue where? Into 2s, 3s, and 4s, into that world where I know Andy's going to say this. I know she is, because my boy said it. I wondered where they learned it. It's like it's inside them. You aren't my boss. You're not the boss of me. You're not the boss of me. I used to hear it all the time. Where did they learn that? One of you taught them and sent it home. Do this to your father. See, Andy will be right. You are right when you say that. The truth is, nobody's the boss of you, unless, of course, it's at work and you really have a boss. That's why I'm my own boss. No, not really. But you get that, right? I mean, we really have to learn, I am in charge of me. It is a primary skill set. It is incredibly important. We need to learn that we can be and are in charge of ourselves. And I promise you, Jesus knew and practiced this principle. And see, I think that's what is at the root of this story today that is so commanding and such a huge idea for Jesus. This idea that he is presenting to us. He's talking about words, actions, attitudes. He's talking because he's being confronted by the elders. And what do they ask him when he's doing what he does? By whose authority do you do this? And he doesn't answer. He doesn't have to answer. He knows they're going to get the message. They're going to get the answer, and they're not going to like it. I'm doing it by my authority. My authority. They know that. But see, he's digging deeper, isn't it? It isn't just that I'm in charge of me. He's saying that, but when he implies authority, what has he told us again and again? You know the answer to that. He keeps saying, where does he get his authority? From God. He doesn't act like I just have it. I have a credit card and I walk around this way. That our authority comes from God in life. That's part of our spiritual journey. So he acts and teaches and performs miracles and healings boldly with authority because, you see, he believes God has entrusted this authority to him. It is a spiritual principle. I want you to hear this. It's not political. It's not sociological. It is spiritual. He's saying there's a spiritual principle at hand. And what is it? Well, I'll say it the way I say it. I say it a lot, by the way. Those of you around me know I say it all the time. I mean it. I mean it, and I say it so that I will practice it. I remind myself. You and God are in charge of you. You and God are in charge of you. No one else is in charge of you. I'm not in charge of you. The church is not in charge of you. The bishop's not in charge of you. Chris is not in charge of you. You and God are in charge of you. And yes, that means Andy to the oldest person here. Now, yeah, we've got to coach and help little children. But do we really teach in the church that we're in control of each other? No, we don't. We don't. We say it, and then we rebel against it. And it's been happening for 2,000 years. That's the story we don't talk about publicly. We just happen to say it around here, that we're not in charge of each other. You must be in charge of you, and I trust that God is in you and God is in me, and we're trying to work it out. You see, I think that's what Jesus is trying to give them, that God is really with everybody there. Have they missed that point? Do they think he's just doing these things idly? By the way, they are good things that he is doing. But he is doing it in his relationship with God, just as we must and learn and need to trust that we're all doing the same thing. We're acting out this relationship in God, every one of us. That's what he was trying to give the disciples. That is literally, clearly what he's trying to give us today. It's a gift, a really important gift. And maybe it is as simple as trying to motivate all who would follow him. But remember, it's not just about accomplishing assignments. It's more, isn't it? It's something deeper. It's to look inside and see what capacities really are inside of you. What's going on down inside of you that could be used, that you're not tapping, that would be a resource for you and bring you pleasure and abundance? That's the kind of world Jesus hopes for. I heard a story from a teacher. This is very powerful. She was struggling with one of the main topics in today's world for educators, those of you educators, that particularly with young adults, and it's the topic of bullying. What do we do? And she had tried the front door approach, and she was failing at it. And she had a little boy in her class that was really struggling. He was being bullied, and she didn't know what to do. And she tried every other method, punishment, chastisement, ridicule. She had done everything she could to try to calm the waters. And then she got this brilliant idea to do something different. She went in the back door, not the front door. She decided that she would actually she wrote a letter to the one doing the bullying. Instead of trying to take care and nurture the kid being bullied, who was struggling, so let me try something else. She wrote a letter to him to his home so that his parents would see it. Not to punish him, but so that it was all out and open. Not going to play games here. And I'm going to read to you a bit of what she wrote. The little boy's name is Jay. Dear Jay, Andy in your class has told me that he is very unhappy this year. People are name-calling and not inviting him to play on the playground, and he is lonely. I am concerned about Andy, and I know that you are too. Your experience as a leader in the class makes you a likely person for me to turn to for help. And so I'm writing you this letter. I value your opinion and your ability to sympathize with Andy. I know you can. Please write me any suggestions about how you can help him, and I will look forward to talking to you about this. That's called a backdoor, a brilliant backdoor. Guess what happened? You know what happened. Jay quit bullying Andy. Stopped immediately. His behavior changed in class. And not because he was beaten down. Not because she took control of him, but why? He understood his own ability to take care of himself. Now, does it happen every time? No. But I wonder if we tried that approach more instead of less, what we might find. Tedious, time-consuming, not blaming educators. I feel for you folks just trying to hang on in class. I get it. But you see, when we do the other, it's just back to the same old, same old. Actually reinforcing that you're not really in charge of you. Of course you are in charge of you. We can't lie to someone. It's the truth. All of us know it. I think what Jesus is asking us today, what kind of capacities are in us that might be pulled forward when we recognize that. I am in charge of me. I do have authority. It's spiritual authority, and it's powerful. Remember, Jesus trusted those around him. In fact, he trusted them so much, he said, you will do far greater things than I'm going to do. He wasn't playing with him. He really meant it. He said, you're going to take this ministry down roads and trails and byways, into towns, into cities, into people's hearts in ways that I cannot even imagine. And over 2,000 years, it has come true. Year in and year out, that's exactly what the church does. You see, he saw potential that we often do not see. And some of it comes from simply being able to engage ourselves. Gosh, I'm in charge of me. It's a simple thought. I wonder what I could do if I could. Everybody knows Pathead Summit. Some of you actually do know her personally. Knew her and know her. The stories about her are huge. This is one of my favorites. It's in her autobiography. You know, she was pretty good at what she did win 1,000 games with her teams and captured 8 women's basketball titles. But you may remember when they were playing North Carolina in the Final Four some time ago, and during the game they were behind 12 points. And she was fuming. The typical, like this, up and down the sideline. I'm glad I didn't play. She would scare me. She was like tough. And she didn't know what to do, and she called timeout. 8 minutes and 18 seconds left on the clock. She called timeout. Brought the team over, and there's pandemonium. I mean, there's so much noise. They can't even hear her, so she doesn't try to speak. She starts staring them each in the face. She doesn't say a word. She turns one to another like this. Well, you know what she did? She focused their attention. They were absolutely 100%. Their attention was on her. It's like the rest of everything was closed out. And then she said this. She said, we are not going to lose this ball game. It's not going to happen. We have come too far, and we have worked way too hard for you not to win this ball game. It is in your grasp. We are not leaving here without this championship. It's not going to happen. She said, you have drilled and drilled and drilled and practiced and practiced and practiced the very thing that you're going out to do. One thing, and you're going to do it, and we're going to win the game. She said, you're going to go out, and you're going to stop them 7 straight times, and when you have done that and we have scored, we will be in the lead, and we're going to win the ball game. And then she got complete silence. She just looked at them. They did a high five. Game started. Clock starts again. The next 7 trips down the floor, they created 6 turnovers. And in the next few minutes, they tilted it, and they scored 20 straight points. And they beat them 56-50. Then they went on in the final game to beat Rutgers for the national championship. Do you see, she didn't give them anything they didn't have. She really did remind them, you have done this. You've practiced this. Now you're going to go execute what you've practiced. Go do what you can do. And they did that, and then they kicked it up a notch. You see, she touched in a magical way that kind of potential that is in them. See, Jesus was in a society that didn't often do that. The rules and regulations often called for mediocrity rather than excellence. What do we ask for? I ask you that to think about. There's a lot of excellence around us. My gracious, the opportunities that can be seized, that can be done. And I promise you, if you look around, they're happening. They're happening because people step forward and say, I can do that, and then figure it out. You see, Jesus has a spiritual principle. It is not social. Maybe it has some implications. It's not political. It's just what we do. We come here week after week, kneel together at the altar rail, eat bread and wine together to remind ourselves of something powerful. And what is that? That the Spirit is here. And it's here and it's bigger than here, right? It's everywhere. But more importantly, the Spirit is here in every one of you. I don't pretend to understand it. I didn't say it. Jesus said it. The Spirit is inside of you. God's Spirit is inside of you. That's a primary spiritual principle for us. And when we seize that, I wonder what can happen. It's kind of like Philippians today, what they were seeing. This little tiny church community, we preached about them the last couple of weeks, this little group of people, they were learning to show sympathy and compassion to the world around them. They were looking out for the interests and the well-being of others, even when they didn't want to. And they found themselves stretched and enjoying the stretch. It wasn't bad, it was a great thing. They were living into the Spirit. And there is no doubt that when you live into the Spirit today, there's no telling what can happen. I promise you, you have tasted it. It's a matter of us wanting to taste it again, to really ask ourselves, what is the potential in me? Not have someone else ask you, you ask yourself. That's what Jesus challenges the elders to do. I'm not going to tell you. He doesn't give them an answer. I'm going to show you. And then he does what he does. You know, each of us can fulfill God's hope in us. I promise, and we do. Each of us fulfills God's Spirit in us, and we can, and we do. Then we fulfill, I think, what God hopes for. It is God's hope and love for this world. We just sang it in the hymn. This is my Father's world. He had this deep, does have this deep longing and hope for something among us. And you realize what each of you is. You are a part of God's dream. You are a part of God's dream for this world. What great news. Amen.